Welcome to Brain Strength. This is a series where this average Joe occasionally does some athletic things, but mostly focuses on teaching you a thing or two about sports psych along the way. So this is your host, RJ Lynch, with my master's in sports psychology. Let's get this thing rolling. On this episode of Brain Strength, our focus is, focus. How to concentrate, how to keep your eye on the ball, keep you driven towards a single direction instead of going every which way. So what is focus? Focus is the ability to concentrate on the task at hand while being able to filter out distractions. And while that is the main definition of focus, for our context in sport of what we work on, what we talk about when we call it one of the mental competencies, we also talk about our ability to shift our focus. So in life, in games, in practice, we might have to go from one thing to the next in a split second, blink of the eye moment, and our ability to make that shift can be the big difference. Not only can we lock out the crowd noise, but can we shift from one play to the next? Before I go any further, I want to tell you about the two types of distractions that we can have, the things that can pull us away and make us less focused. The first is the internal distractions. These are those thoughts and emotions that might rise. So you're at practice that day and you're supposed to be going through certain drills, but you're thinking about that test that you failed during the day, or that text that you had with your partner that didn't go well, or maybe one that went really well and you're like, ooh, exciting.
Oh my.
Those are those internal distractions. And then they can also come in games and all that as well as the result of other things. So a ref makes a bad call. Now you're filled with anger. You just have that rage. And instead of focusing on the next play, going from thing to thing, you're now focused on how angry you are. Your anger is blinding you in a way. And then external distractions. These are the things that might be crowd noise. They might be your opponent, if they're trash talking you, saying things, trying to get in your ear, the crowd yelling, making funny faces, the mascot doing their funky dance in the corner. Whatever it is, those distractions. Now, there is a spectrum to focus from extremely fine-in, narrow-minded, like right here, there's only that certain thing, to a little bit broader, still generally focused on things, but a little bit more side-eyes, seeing things here to here. And then there's distracted, sort of distracted, and kind of everywhere in between. And now, depending on the situation, one thing might be better than the other. If you are a golfer, you may just be very fine-tuned, extremely focused on hitting the ball, just being right here, making this shot, going from point A to point B with nothing else in your mind. If you're playing basketball, if you're so focused on just putting the ball in the hoop, you might miss your teammates being open or a better shot somewhere else on the court. So your focus is a little broadened. Just a little bit. Now, on the distracted end of the spectrum, very rarely do you want to be fully distracted, like not even thinking about the game, thinking about what's happening. But sometimes there are moments for some sports where a little distraction can be beneficial. And most of the time, this comes down to when you're dealing with some soreness, maybe a little bit of a nagging injury. I think about cross-country runners or distance swimmers, Nordic skiers a lot. They're focused on getting their goal, chasing the next person there, but their body's dealing with pain. They're suffering a little bit as they go through it, and their mind's trying to focus in on that. So what do? They find other ways to distract themselves a little bit so that they're not thinking about how much pain they're in. Maybe they're distracting themselves with their opponent in front of them. They're thinking about chasing that person right there. That's where they're going for. Because at the end of the day, a distraction is just a different point of focus. So now that we know that, understand the spectrum a little bit more, let's look at the idea of focus versus being distracted on the far ends of the spectrum. At its best, at where we want people to be focused, we want them being very present moment. They want the awareness of where they are right here, right now. They're not thinking of the past, future. They're not thinking of what could be, what would be, what should be. They're just being. They just are. They know what their emotions are at this moment, and that's where their mind's at. They're generally very driven by the task. And then also they're able to quickly recover when a distraction happens. So they get bumped, they get knocked down, they drop a ball, they have a false start, a scratch, miss a swing, have an error. And instead of staying there, instead of staying with this distraction, instead of staying with this failure, they're able to be like, oh, now I gotta go here. And then finally, they have that selective attention. They're only going to focus on the things that matter for them to perform their best. Someone who's distracted in a bad way, who's doing things that are not going to be great for their performance, first off, they're easily distracted. They're kind of like the dog that sees a squirrel, like, squirrel! Permitted to. Squirrel! And then their mind just goes to the squirrel wherever it needs to be, and they see something else, they're there. They're overthinkers. Someone who gets distracted easily and has it hurt their performance generally overthink. There's too much in their head. They're letting their internal thoughts distract them instead of just doing the thing. They're thinking about what should, what could, what would happen. They're very inconsistent. When someone's distracted, it means they're not focused on doing things right, so it's very possible for them to do things wrong. And then there's also usually a lot of emotional distractions. Sport life is emotional. Unless you're a complete psychopath, you feel emotions and they can get in the way. Someone whose focus is able to shift from that anger, that happiness, to what they need to be now. Someone who's not able to focus stays with that emotion and just lets it take them for the ride. So a couple little science bits, a couple theories on things. First, you have flow theory. Flow theory is something that really has a video all on its own, but quick little summary of what it means for focus. When we find the zone or we find ourselves very present in flow, what that really means is we're in such a state of deep focus that we are just acting almost naturally. Things are just going through us without much thought. We're so focused, we're so there, and then the challenge and skill of the moment are so perfectly matched that we just find our best performance. We just do, we just act, which then leads us to ACT, or attentional control theory. It's one of the baseline psychological methods or ideas that people look at. It's attentional control. It's this idea that anxiety, emotions affect our ability to focus. So instead of a task, we end up focusing on a threat. So what do we work on? We teach you how to deal with the anxiety, deal with the threats, so that you can focus on your task instead. And then lastly, one that's a little less scientific but might make sense to people is the spotlight metaphor. It's this idea that our brains are like spotlights. We can either have a spotlight that's very focused on a single person, that's focused on a single thing here, or we can expand that light. We can let it broaden, all depending on the demands in the situation. So like I said, in golf, you might have to be very narrow-minded. You focus this shot, this swing. Basketball, you have to think about this. But then in basketball as well, when you're at a free throw line, you just want to be here. You just want to be thinking about the free throw and not about what your teammates are doing, how they're boxing out on that. You should be just focusing on that shot. Whereas the rest of the game, it's so free-flowing, you need to be everywhere. Same thing with volleyball in a lot quicker standpoint. You're very focused on the serve. That's where your mind's at. You know what you want to do there. But then in almost an instant, as soon as that hand hits the ball, you have to broaden that focus to, okay, where's everybody else on my team? What are they doing as they're reacting to what the opponent's doing? And all of a sudden that focus is a lot more broadened, but still narrowed into just what's happening on the court and not so worried about the crowd or what else is going on. So what would I do as a mental performance pro to help someone with focus? First thing, just because of my background, and for those of you who've been following know I've talked about this a lot, is mindfulness training. I'll have people sit down and we'll start with, can you just focus on your breath? Your mind will try to think about this, or that, but can you stay with your breath? Can you count during your breath? Can you do this or that? Can you keep moving in a single line of thought? And I just have you focus on the feet, the pressure in your feet. Next up is arrival exercises. So one thing that I love to do with groups when I work with them, or teams, or just individuals anywhere, is this idea of arrival. What do arrival exercises look like? What do they feel like? Well, one that I'll have people do when I'm doing a group session is everybody will be chattering, they're thinking about things, they just came in to listen to my talk. They might be there because they want to be, they might be there because they were told to be. So what do I have people do? I have everybody quiet for a second. I have them stand up. Then I have them breathe in. And then breathe out as they sit back down, and I tell them to arrive. Because when they're breathing in and out, they can't talk, they can't be anywhere else, they're just focused on what I'm saying and all that. So what I'm having them do is I'm having them shut things off and just arrive in this moment. When it comes to sport, this might be getting to your locker. It might be tying your shoes just before practice. Doing something that has you just be present instead of thinking about all the other things that happen during the day or what you have to do after practice, trying to arrive. And this then ties together with cue words or emotions. So I said, you're getting distracted, things are going on during a game. If you're in a sport that lets you take a break to tie your shoe, maybe that's it. You nail down, you tie your shoe, you breathe, get yourself back in, you arrive again, you reset yourself. You might have bracelets, a word written on your hand, something that just tells you to arrive, to focus here, be here. Things like this that remind yourself, like, I am right here, right now, and that's all that matters. Routine development can help you focus. I always caution people with routines because there's a difference between routine and ritual. Ritual is this belief that the things you're doing are going to lead to a certain result.
¿Qué pasa there, Pedro?
Bats. Yeah, I see. I cannot hit curveball. Straight ball, I hit it very much. Curveball, bats are afraid. I asked Jobu to come. Take fear from bats. I offer him cigar. You're wrong. He will come.
Whereas a routine are things that you do beforehand to just help yourself focus, feel confident, know that things are there, but you're not married to it. If something throws you off your routine, it shouldn't take you out of the game, whereas a ritual, people become very connected, emotionally set in it, and it can be dangerous. So developing a routine where you're like, all right, I arrive, quick take a few breaths, put on my uniform, tie my shoes, close my eyes for a second, and I just arrive. That can be a routine. Then finally, I would have them do things such as spot concentrations. So whether it's a ball, a pencil, even the end of their finger, just having them focus and breathe here for a sec, concentrate on this spot, on the implement they have, something about their sport. I just have them sit there for, can you maintain focus for 30 seconds, for a minute? Seeing how long you can drag out that focus on just one thing without your mind going this way, that way, every which way. Those are usually the starting points. Coaches, athletes, how can you yourself do it? First thing that a lot of coaches might already be doing is simulate game distractions. So pumping in crowd noise, music that your team doesn't like, whatever it is, trying to do things that can throw them off their game, extra whistles, things going on the side, things like that. And it's allowing your athletes to try new skills that they might have. So maybe you bring in Mental Performance Pro, we do some mindfulness breathing stuff, some routine development, and then next practice, you start throwing a bunch of distractions at them and see, can they put the stuff into action? Can they do what you were talking about? Or do they just go back into their erratic, crazy state where they're bouncing off the walls and there's no flow, there's no rhythm to anything going on? Next up, maybe you have your own focus strategies for the team. Maybe you give them a bracelet or so. Everybody has this one thing that reminds themselves, like family, team, focus. For certain sports, maybe you have a cue card or something that you can hold up to remind people to focus. Things that you say as a coach yelling to them when you're going through the team. You see them getting lost and everything like that. So you yell a certain word that's supposed to remind them to breathe, to focus, to relax, to loosen. Next up would be some mindful walkthroughs, and you can do this yourself or with a Mental Performance Pro, but the day before competition or just before doing a hard drill in practice, have them walk through it very slowly, feeling every motion, focus on what they're supposed to be doing, where they're supposed to be, how things are supposed to feel, and just allowing them to breathe through it. Next up would be mirror drilling. So you have two people paired together on a certain drill, and one person's supposed to copy the other one, or supposed to watch, maintain, chase after them, all based on a mirror idea. So if one person's shuffling, the other person else is shuffling. They have to watch the focus for when that person starts to sprint, because then they gotta sprint and chase after them. Something like that, where it makes the person lock in and be just set there. Then you can do focus circuits. What does a focus circuit look like? Well, it might be doing something that's very broad-minded, a series of sprints, some conditioning, something like that, and then sending everybody to the free throw line or to the penalty kick spot. And now all of a sudden they have to go from just this broad focus of conditioning, of just getting through, to something that's very taxing on their mental, something that they have to lock in for. How quickly can they shift from A to B and then back to A or to something else? Can you go through these different drills that demand a different part of their brain and their body and do it relatively successfully? So that's all I really had for today. If you have any questions or find yourself having issues with focus or your team's focus, reach out to us, set up your consultation, and we'll go from there. So if I say anything today that offends you, I hope you can forgive me. If you say anything in the comments that offends me, no, I'll probably forgive you. So until next time, brain strength out.